Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt on the Weekend in Review show. On this Hugh Hewitt show, Matt Continetti joins me. Matt is with the American Enterprise Institute, the Free Press, Commentary Magazine's Washington columnist and contributor to the Commentary podcast, friend of this program. I love to stump Continetti whenever possible, so I think I have him stumped. Matt Continetti, do you know what a longer lateral is?
A longer lateral?
Yeah.
Other than a football pass
Nope.
that goes farther than usual, I can't think of an answer, Hugh.
No, there are three terms. There is the a sideways pass in football. A longer lateral technical definition is where you drill down for oil or natural gas, and then you go lateral. So it's sort of slant drilling, but it's not slant drilling. You go deep, and then you go
Fracking.
left or right. Fracking. And Longer Lateral is the name of the podcast hosted by Ann Bradbury, who's a client of the show, the sponsor of the show, the American Exploration Production Council. And I spent some time last night talking to Energy Secretary Chris Wright about longer laterals. It's a big deal. We can get a lot more oil and gas out of the United States if we choose to do it. And that podcast is fabulous. It's over at the axpc.org website and their YouTube channel. Matt, I've got 7 topics we got to run through. I tried to arrange them in order of importance. I want to begin with China and Putin meeting Xi meeting Trump next week in South Korea. What are the stakes? What do you think is going to come out of this?
I think the stakes are high. You were talking about the trade relationship between the two biggest economies in the world, the United States and China. Of course, there are security issues as well with Taiwan, the Indo-Pacific, that the two countries have been tense over at times. Trump's trying to relax tensions, I think. He wants a good trade deal. He wants to befriend Xi Jinping once again. So I think they're likely to come up with some way to avoid kind of the worst outcome here in terms of tariffs. But Hugh, what I think is important is to take a step back and look at how the Trump administration is decoupling the United States from China. When you think about the different rare earths minerals deals that this administration has made, most recently with Australia, when you look at how the Trump administration has used the Commerce Department's investment accelerator to take equity stakes in these companies that are tied to critical supply chains, whether it's Intel, you have the Defense Department actually taking ownership of a rare earths company. These are measures that you don't normally associate with a conservative administration, but I think they're all part of a larger strategy to get America in a position where we're not so dependent on China for these critical industries in the event that our relationship goes south fast.
Now, I have a little nightmare scenario, Matt. We're sending an aircraft carrier to the Caribbean. It's been a long time since Southern Command got a carrier down there to go with our other armada that is putting pressure on Venezuela and possibly even Colombia. My nightmare scenario is that Trump and Xi just agree, we're going to take back South America into our sphere of influence and you can have Taiwan. Does that worry you, or is in fact the aircraft carrier a way to tell Xi that if you move on Taiwan, we move on all your clients in South America?
Yeah, I'm interested in this new approach to China in the second Trump administration. It's a little bit less focused on security and Taiwan and more focused on economics and supply chains. Part of that does have to deal with Latin America. Remember, we started this term with the fight over the Panama Canal. And Trump's desire to reassert our control over the Panama Canal. And then, of course, our association with Argentina and our plans to help Javier Milei there, I think, are related to efforts to block China from taking more market share in Argentina. And then, of course, there's the drug war. I thought it was very interesting that Trump mentioned his intent to bring up fentanyl at the top of his conversation with Xi Jinping. So drawing a connection between the precursor chemicals that are made in China and then trafficked through Latin America into the United States of America, where they poison our citizens. So Trump's been flexing his muscles, whether it's Operation Midnight Hammer, whether it's the ceasefire agreement and hostage deal, or now it's kind of escalating our presence in the Caribbean in order to exert pressure on the cartels and on Maduro and Petro, as you mentioned. China notices it all, I'm sure.
And when I come back with Matt, we're going to be talking about the shutdown and the East Wing renovation and gambling. And during the break, we're going to talk about the fentanyl problem and the strikes on the boats, which President Trump says he's well within his constitutional authority. I'll ask Senator Kennedy about that coming up next hour as well. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be back with Continetti. I'll talk to him during the break. It'll be on the Big Weekend Pod. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I've got Matt Continetti with me. Matt, I was sitting in the green room last night with Annie Linsky, talented reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and a clip played of President Trump saying 300,000 Americans had died from fentanyl. And both Annie and I said, that's a new number. I hadn't heard it. So I did some research. A Pulitzer was awarded to Reuters this year for a 7-part series that put the number of Americans dead because of fentanyl at 450,000 people. Does that number surprise you?
I'm afraid not. Hugh, I've been tracking this story for almost a decade now. I think the deaths of despair that took our country in the past 10 years, leading to premature deaths among Americans from alcoholism, from drugs, from opioids, and then from fentanyl, has inflicted a tremendous toll on our country. I think it's contributed to the rise of populism and to the rise of Donald Trump, who has always affiliated himself with the victims of this drug trafficking and abuse. And so we're in a situation where sometimes, we've had years where more people die of opioids than were killed throughout the American involvement in Vietnam. And devastation on that scale, I think, is why you see President Trump take this very aggressive approach in the past few months against the drug dealers and traffickers.
I was asked by Brett last night, is it constitutional? And I said, I have no problem. There are areas to which the commander-in-chief authority does not extend. This is not one of them. I'm perfectly happy with him blowing up narco boats, and I trust our intel. Are you?
Yeah, my colleague Jed Rubenfeld of Yale Law School had an excellent piece on this subject at the Free Press, Hugh, exploring the constitutionality of the strikes on the drug traffickers. He says he went into it thinking that the constitutionality of these measures was doubtful, but he found that it was much more complicated than he expected. And I do think what's happening right now falls under the president's Article II authority as commander-in-chief of the United States. But I would also like Congress to ask a little bit more questions, draw the administration further out on what their strategy is. What's the end game here?
I'll talk to Senator Kennedy about it when he comes on next hour. But I'll tell you right now, I think Jed Rubenfeld is very smart. I'm not surprised he got there. It's as Justice Jackson said I think it's Steel Seizure cases. The precedents we have are like Joseph's dreams. Anyone can read them any way they want. And I think the president can bomb narco boats. Don't go anywhere, America. Matt Continetti's back to weigh in on the East Wing when we come back. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, Matt Continetti, columnist of The World, actually, and the author of The Right, An Intellectual History of Conservatism in America, which I would also recommend to you. Matt, there's a government shutdown, there's a remodel of the East Wing and the building of a ballroom, and there's the gambling scandal. I know which one I think is most important, but which one do you think is most important?
I think the shutdown is the most important of those three stories, but I have to tell you, the gambling scandal is nipping at its heels.
Yeah, well, I agree. And the East Wing, can we dismiss that as being the silly trigger on the left-wing media?
I would love to dismiss the East Wing story, Hugh, but I can't because of what it's revealed about the mental state of the American left. I had never thought that people would be so traumatized by Donald Trump's reelection that the remodeling of a part of the White House that no one has given any thought to since it was constructed 80 years ago would send people into such a hysteria. And so I think it's very revealing of where the left and the Democrats and liberals in the media are right now, is that even in places where they could have stories to talk about Donald Trump and his actions, take the drug war we were discussing, take some of the pardons that have been happening, rather than focus on that, they are driven mad by the sight of these steam shovels and bulldozers on the White House lawn.
Well, I think what's really bothering him is Donald Trump leaving a permanent impact on the footprint of the White House. That's what really is bothering them. It's always going to be the Trump ballroom. They might change the name, but it'll always be like TR built the West Wing. Trump is building the new East Wing and ballroom. But on the shutdown, if Republicans had allowed the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program for poor people, it's food for poor people, to go unfunded and therefore lapse. So they give people cards to go to the grocery store and buy food. What would the media be like on that, Matt Continetti?
Well, we'd be hearing nonstop headlines about the cruelty of Republicans. You know, you could also say what would happen if Republicans were voting down paying the troops during a government shutdown. You would hear nonstop talk of how Republicans are endangering national security. Instead, we're kind of in this limbo shutdown where Chuck Schumer is telling people that every day it gets better for the Democratic Party. It's the same kind of illogic that led him to shut down the government in the first place. I think it's a disaster for the Democrats, Hugh. I really do. There's no end game here. That if they prolong it even further, then these Obamacare subsidies are going to lapse, and they'll never be restored. So I really don't know what they're thinking.
Well, I also wonder, I've already voted for Winsome Sears and Jason Miyares. My vote can't change, but a lot of government employees in Northern Virginia are very smart people, and they know why they're not getting paid. Do you think there's any way it helps Abigail Spanberger, world's worst candidate?
I think the Democrats believe so, and that this is why that we'd expect the shutdown to persist until after Election Day. But I don't know whether that type of cynical argument that, we'll continue to keep down the government shutdown so that the government employees in Northern Virginia will vote for the Democratic candidate. I don't know if that cynical ploy flies anymore. You know, we live in a very different environment. The liberal media has much less control over the information flows as it used to. I think most people, even people in the center, recognize that it's the Democrats who are responsible for the shutdown, and that the government would reopen in a minute if the Democrats
I agree, Matt.
give the votes.
There is no narrative, or there are actually 1,000 narratives, and none of them dominate. I do want to get to the gambling story. I don't gamble except a flyer on the Browns winning the Super Bowl every other year. That's it, and only because it's a passion play and it's a stupid blind luck might happen. Yeah, it's a lightning strike. I think there's a big story here, and I'm going to talk about it on Special Report tonight. I think the college athletics are really threatened because a lot of those kids are never going to play in any league that pays them anything. They have a payday opportunity, illegal though it might be. They don't face a lifetime sanction. What do you think is the extent of the gambling scandal?
Oh, I think it's deep. And I think the Supreme Court is responsible for it. On many levels. I mean, whether it was the Supreme Court decision that essentially created what we have as this nationalized online betting market that has become entangled with our professional sports leagues, or the Supreme Court decision on the NILs, which creates now the opportunities you're talking about for the young athletes to become ensnared in the same type of corruption and favor trading. I think this is a lesson in how much harm the court can do, even when it doesn't intend to. I'm very concerned about this. Americans love professional sports, and our love of professional sports rests on the integrity of the game. And there have been cheating scandals in basketball before in recent years, but something of this magnitude, drawing in the mafia and illegal poker games in one of the cases, I think will really sour people on the NBA at a time when the season's actually off to a really exciting and interesting start. So I hope the league does something to address this. And more importantly, I hope it leads us to reevaluate the way in which we've allowed these online betting platforms to kind of assimilate into the national pastimes, like some type of Borg from Star Trek or something.
It is a Borg.
It really
I want to close.
It hurts the game and it hurts people too.
Now, I want to close. I'll take you into the break to do this. I thought you'd been sent to Podhoretz prison because you vanished for a couple of weeks. In fact, you're in India. And I am Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, loves India. President Trump loves India. Did you love India?
I was awed by India. Uh, I think that's the best way to do it. India overwhelmed me, Hugh. I'm still trying to process how I feel. I'll tell you this about India: there's more of everything, and it happens all at once. And so there's really no country that I've ever been to quite like it. It's something else. How can you not love it?
Well, I've never been. Dr. Arn is the same way. All of his students want to go to India. And which cities did you go to, Matt?
I was in New Delhi, I was in Hyderabad, and I was in Ahmedabad, which is in the home state of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who I got to meet and
Oh, are you
convey
going to write this up
American
for the Free Press?
salutations to. You know, I was doing the hard business of foreign policy, Hugh, diplomatic outreach.
I'm glad to hear it. Matt Continetti, we don't have to do the overtime now. I'm looking forward to reading something about it in the Free Press or in commentary soon. Follow him on X at Continetti. Thank you, Matt. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned.